Hey everybody, it's Shawn Michael with Geek.0. So, a couple of days ago, Nintendo canceled or discontinued production of the NES Mini, or the NES Classic, which was a miniaturized and small form factor re-release of the original NES console. Very tiny, cute, nice little gizmo, HDMI enabled, preloaded with 30 games. It's not like a standard NES in the fact that you can put cartridges in it and play those old NES games, but it does come preloaded with 30 ROMs for the games that Nintendo perceived to be the most popular or possibly the ones that sold the best for them. This console went nuts, or I should say this re-release, this reimagining of the NES, it went insane. As soon as it became available, it was sold out through every major retailer that had it available, be that Best Buy, Walmart, Target, Amazon.com, GameStop. Everybody was sold out of this, and the only place that you could grab it was essentially on eBay from scalpers who paid $59 for the thing and then were selling it for $500 to $600. So NES Classic obviously was a massively popular product for Nintendo. And unfortunately, inexplicably almost, Nintendo announced a couple days ago that they were ceasing production of the system, much to the chagrin of gamers everywhere. People going nuts and crazy, going, why in the world would you do that? Why would Nintendo take a product that was in such demand, that was such a low-cost product in the first place, and with that much demand in the public and desire for it, then discontinue the production of it completely? And we thought about that, and I thought about it a lot, and I kept trying to come up with a reason why Nintendo would do something like that. I have a couple suggestions or possibilities, maybe just a couple theories on my end. I don't know that any of these are true, but they make a little sense to me, and so I thought I'd share them with people. So the first of which is that the NES Classic wasn't intended, I should say, to be a long life product for Nintendo. The product was intended to cause a lot of hype and get a lot of attention for Nintendo, which it did prior to the launch of the Switch. It got people hyped back up for a Nintendo product and more excited, and started the ball rolling, I should say, with the hype train and excitement for Nintendo again. And so when more and more news about the Switch hit, eyes were all ready. Nintendo was already into the zeitgeist again. It was already all over Twitter and trending. So it was great promotional material and a low cost promotional product for them to increase the hype. Now, I'm not saying that Nintendo as a company ever needs assistance with news generation or hype, but let's face it, the last time they had a true runaway product on their hands was the Wii, which wasn't that great of a product in the first place, more of a niche product that got bought up in bulk by a large number of organizations. So that catapulted its sales as opposed to your general consumer, sales numbers. So the NES Classic, I think, partially helped get them back into the frame, so to speak, of social media and get people talking about them. Number two, another thing to consider is this product wasn't. It was designed and manufactured probably for a very, very low cost for Nintendo. And I know that Nintendo had to have some concept that this little sucker was going to be popular, but whether or not Nintendo really had any idea that it would be as popular as it turned out to be, I don't know. And it's possible, entirely possible, that Nintendo wants to take away this massive amount of attention and desire around this little product and get people focusing on the Switch. And discontinuing production of this would do just that. Instead of people out there clamoring and dying to get their hands on an NES Mini or an NES Classic, then they would, be more geared towards or a little more focused on Nintendo's other offerings. I don't necessarily think that that's legitimately the reason, because let's face it, a large number of people who bought a Switch already have an NES Classic if they manage to get their hands on one. And I don't think the desire to get an NES Classic was going to stop anyone from buying a Switch in the first place. So I, could just be, shooting completely off the mark. But another thing that came to my mind was, what if Nintendo is trying Disney's tried and true tactic of taking something that's a product of theirs that's in demand and discontinuing it, and then every so often, periodically, pulling it out of the vault, so to speak, and making it available for consumers yet again. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought that's definitely a viable possibility. So if Nintendo were to discontinue production of the NES Classic and stow it away and give it some time, and possibly even expand on that with potentially this year or next year releasing the SNES Classic. And then in a few years, they pull it out of the vault, so to speak. They produce a limited number of units. They re-release them again for a limited amount of time. Obviously, every single unit will sell out almost instantaneously. So they have 100% sell-through, which looks really good on the books, but it also makes sure that a product that you've got is in constant demand, instead of trying to keep up with demand for long enough and then having excess inventory on the books that you don't want to deal with. Another thing I noticed is I never paid any attention to the box when I got it, other than just, that it was cool. But this, if you can see here, it says Classics. And it got me to thinking that maybe Nintendo's intention from the get-go was to re-release their previous consoles, their cartridge-based consoles at least, in miniature format. Do them like, many of this trend started years ago with these pre-manufactured, I should say, these manufactured miniature versions of consoles that are preloaded with games. So what if the intention is to take this and make this a line of products where it says Classics here? So essentially there'll be an SNES Classic, possibly an N64 Classic. Is that possible? Could we see that? So instead of this just being a one-off product that Nintendo just made for fun and for gags and giggles, maybe there's a method to the madness. Maybe they have a plan in place and they're going to release several more consoles like this, so they can kind of relive that renaissance period of Nintendo with the NES Classic, the SNES Classic, the N64 Classic. So it's a possibility. Right now, honestly, it's all speculation, and nobody truly knows other than Nintendo themselves. I've seen articles from everyone, and everyone's got some pretty compelling arguments and complaints, legit complaints, about this whole system, this whole process, and the situation with them canceling the NES Classic. From a business standpoint, though, just logically speaking, from somebody who doesn't know what the overall grand plan is, it seems like a pretty stupid decision to take a product that is in such high demand that people are clamoring for, that probably doesn't cost much to manufacture, and then just completely discontinue it when demand is just insane through the roof. It only made the units that are available currently, that people had bought up, those who had bought up several of them and were selling them for a high price on eBay, it's only made them more valuable to those people. So if Nintendo had some chagrin or some animosity towards those scalpers, those people who are buying the product and then selling it for an increased amount on eBay, on those auction sites, trying to maximize their profit off of Nintendo's product, they didn't help the situation by canceling it, because it only got worse after they did. So I don't know. I really don't know what's in Nintendo's head, but I do have a couple theories, like I said, and I think that it's entirely possible that they'll release a line of these things, and we'll see, obviously another, is it 2 consoles to come out, and so you have a little trifecta of classic consoles. I think it'd be a while before we saw a Wii Classic. There's much more to that if we ever saw one at all. Obviously, we're talking about motion controls and disc-based games, which take up a whole lot more space in storage, a lot more data to just pack into a ROM onto a system. So very interesting. I think that it doesn't make sense as a business decision for Nintendo without, knowing what's behind the curtain, so to speak, the Nintendo curtain of secrecy. But I have seen some people with some interesting theories out there. I read someplace that, or heard the other day, someone say that thought it was potentially possible that Nintendo is just really pissed off about all the people who've modded it or hacked it and put the entire NES library on there because they didn't like the 30 games that Nintendo judged worthy enough to be on it. That there are other classic games that are truly amazing that were extremely popular that people wanted on their NES Classics and they didn't get them. And instead they got, the other games that were pre-included. So who knows? It's just a theory and a thought and thought I'd share with everybody. So what do you think? What do you think Nintendo's motivations and ideas are? What do you think they're going with this? Why do you think they canceled production? I'd be curious to find out. So like and subscribe if you like, dislike if you didn't, and then let me know in the comments. Let us know what you think and what your opinion on the whole situation is. Later, geeks.